You are listening to the Oqual cycle with Amjad Farouk. And now, Epilogue. Since the outset of the current Aquanium, 1955 to 2038, a slew of imbalances and transgressions have once again become endemic to human society at every socio-political level. To right the wrong, humans are therefore set for yet another rendezvous with the destiny that arrives on our shores once every 84 years on average. While such a meeting with the destiny cannot be averted, how we deal with the fallout from the ongoing socio-political upheaval will determine our fate. Bluntly put, how one approaches the looming crisis will determine how well one emerges on the other side of the bedlam. Impulsive actions combined with the egoism spell trouble, while thoughtful choices in conjunction with the humility stand to assuage the wrath of the emerging crisis. Thus, although the doctrine of Oqual cycle may suggest that our lives are governed by determinism, it is ultimately our free will that in fact dictates the severity of the fallout from such a perennial rendezvous. For example, no one doubts that our lives are to a large extent governed by the annual cycle. One can predict with reasonable accuracy that the April showers will bring May flowers in spring. Summer will be marred by humidity and hurricanes. Crops will be harvested and leaves will fall in autumn. And frigid nights along with the snowstorms will be a hallmark of winter. On the same token, the recurring spell of Oqual cycle on human civilization is also punctuated with a quartet of Uranian seasons from spring through summer and autumn to winter, with each season lasting a time span of 21 years. In a manner that we can forecast the terrestrial year ahead with some semblance of accuracy, the Oqual cycle also equips us with breathtaking insights into what is in store for humanity over the coming decades. Since the birth of modern age in 1451, human civilization has all but spanned 7 full spells of Oqual cycle. Today, we are in the early stages of a long and dark 21-year winter, 2018 to 2038, of the 7th Aquanium that is set to reach its crescendo and unleash the worst of its destructive rage upon our civilization, as it marks its Annus Horribilis 2028 with our day of reckoning inching ever closer. In particular, Oqual winters are renowned for staging the collapse of old and degenerate socio-political orders so as to make way for a brighter dawn. In 2023, we are more or less passing through the same constellation as we did exactly 84 years ago in 1939, in a manner akin to the fact that annual festivities bring a familiar atmosphere from one year to the next. In other words, the ongoing Oqual winter 2018 to 2038 is beginning to bear many echoes of the previous Oqual winter 1934 to 1954. How come have I never heard of the Oqual winter? Unlike the more familiar annual winter that an individual on average traverses dozens of times, the Oqual winter comes only once in our lifetime, and even then very few of us have the logic to connect the dots. For example, an individual born with the onset of the previous Oqual winter was not only too young but also shielded from having to experience the catastrophes that their parents had to endure from the Great Depression through World War II to Holocaust. Today, being in the early stages of the ongoing Oqual winter, that now elderly individual has virtually no first-hand memories of the previous Oqual winter in order to draw comparisons between the recurrence of 2 events roughly spaced apart by 84 years. Still, many elderly people will tell you that they see many parallels between what they witnessed during their early childhood and what is unfolding today before their eyes. In fact, I have been fortunate enough to personally talk to a number of octogenarians and nonogenarians, individuals who are aged 80 to 89 and 90 to 99 years respectively. They all confide in me that not only have they never seen anything like what they're experiencing today in their prolonged lives, but that they always thought that they had already seen the worst. Except, of course, that their memories of the previous Oqual winter have all but faded. In order for humans to directly attest to the recurrence of hell on earth once every 84 years on average, they will have to live through at least a couple of full spells of Oqual cycle disguised as tortoises with a lifespan long enough to meet such stringent criteria. Alternatively, one could summon an elderly tortoise and they will indeed tell you that nothing could be closer to the truth than the dire spell of an Oqual cycle that they have to negotiate at least a couple of times in their adult lives. To add icing on the cake, the anecdotes of tortoises come straight from the horse's mouth, for they have no intention of pursuing a political career, much less running for the nation's highest office, or even tweaking climate models to help their cronies make a killing on introducing new consumer products under the guise of environment-friendly technology. Long story short, what we have seen over the past several years since the onset of the current Oqual winter, 2018 to 2038, has hitherto amounted to nothing more than run-of-the-mill snowstorms, with the once-in-a-lifetime blizzard yet to unleash its rage upon humanity. In fact, comparisons between what humanity is going through today with what it did in the aftermath of 1929 Great Depression are far from being in short supply. Just as that crisis of a lifetime plunged the human society into a global conflict some 84 years earlier, we are once again heading into uncharted waters. A global conflict is indeed all but obligatory to drive the final nail into the coffin of socio-political upheaval that seemingly snowballs into an 800-pound gorilla as the Oqual rhythm nears its end in order to make way for a new dawn of optimism and prosperity. Just as World War II accomplished that goal some 84 years ago, so will World War III over the next decade or so as utter fear and chaos engulf our society, and in doing so purge humanity of mischief so as to enable it to come to its senses once more. While we have been kicking the can down the road since at least the outset of 21st century, the cul-de-sac is inching ever closer as we are destined to reach there sometime between Annus Horribilis 2028 of the current Aquanium and Annus Mirabilis 2039 of the next cycle. All told, the Oqual cycle lends a powerful model for not only making sense of the ongoing socio-political trials and tribulations of our own times, but it also helps us navigate our future with the rational wisdom in lieu of blissful ignorance. Those who ignore the spell of Oqual cycle will be doing so at their own peril. In fact, groundbreaking discoveries are always met with skepticism at first, and the Oqual cycle being disregarded by the trolla and its entourage of seagulls is inevitable until it becomes widely accepted with the passage of time in a stunning echo of humanity's perpetual failure to pay heed to dire lessons of history. For example, the notion that the Earth orbits the Sun was first proposed by Copernicus in 1515, but this so-called heliocentric view of our world would draw the ire of the clergy and continue to be mocked by fools and horses over the course of the next couple of centuries, during which many who dared to subscribe to such a doctrine were either vilified or charged to death. Even the likes of Galileo, Kepler, and Newton would be reprimanded for subscribing to what was then believed to be a heretic view at odds with religion during much of the 16th and 17th centuries. And it was not until 1758 that the Church finally dropped its opposition to heliocentrism, and only then it would go mainstream. Just as the heliocentric model of our world stood the test of time, so will the theory of an Oqual cycle, though none of us alive today will unfortunately be around to celebrate its homecoming in earnest. In closing, the Oqual cycle forecasts the following prophecies to come to fruition sometime during the decade beginning with the Annus Horribilis 2028 of the current Aquanium and ending with the Annus Mirabilis 2039 of the next cycle, so as to herald the true spirit of a global reset. 1. Stock market. Having been inflated by cheap money for more than a decade, the stock market bubble will pop and wipe off the life savings of decamillions in America in an echo of the 1929 crash and making the 2008 financial meltdown look like a dress rehearsal. This is necessary to purge the gunk and fraud out of the financial system that has been gathering momentum over the past several decades in order to lend humanity a fresh start on its economic front with the arrival of a new Oqual cycle. The European markets will likely fare much better given that money printing had little impact on their valuations, as they have largely continued to remain depressed rather than having bloated a la their counterparts on the other side of the Atlantic. 2. Real estate. Having been inflated by cheap money for more than a decade, the real estate bubble across much of the globe will come down crashing so as to bring the property values in line with the earning power of an average household. In particular, the rather bloated valuation of commercial properties will bear the brunt of the wrath of an Oqual cycle as it draws to a close. In the wake of the 2019 coronavirus pandemic, the tectonic shift to conducting personal and business affairs online in lieu of office will also eat into the demand for commercial real estate, thereby further exacerbating the pain for real estate moguls. 3. Bank failures. Due to being over-leveraged with mountains of debt coupled with their fraudulent practices, thousands of zombie companies will go belly up, and in doing so they will also put thousands of their stakeholders, such as lenders and banks, underwater. The mainstream propaganda continues to indoctrinate the masses that the banks are well capitalized and that the financial system is sound and resilient. Nothing could be further from the truth. In fact, the very argument that the banks are well capitalized is an oxymoron, in that money loaned out to businesses and consumers at any given time is multiples greater than a bank's actual worth of deposits, courtesy of the so-called fractional reserve banking. During good times, such exorbitant lending is not an issue, as a booming economy pays for itself. However, during harder times, as is the case across much of the globe today, most borrowers are over-leveraged to the hilt, not to mention that many startups that have borrowed billions from banks only exist on paper with nothing to show for except bogus products that will never see the light of day. Once such fraudulent companies go up in smoke, as they are poised to do so over the next decade due to the dire spell of an Oqual cycle as it nears its end, they will take what are being portrayed as a sound and resilient banking institutions down with them too. With the number of banks having already gone belly up this year, the bank failures are not only just getting started, but they will also make the fall of banking dominoes one after another during the Great Depression look like a child's play. Notably, it was not the subprime mortgage per se that precipitated the 2008 financial crisis, but rather the big banks were brought down to their knees due to being over-leveraged through uber-risky and ultra-speculative derivative trading. Today, such a derivative trading on the part of big banks is multiples greater, and as such, their looming failures will likely dwarf what transpired some 15 years ago. In the context of the dire spell of Oqual cycle, the 2008 financial crisis was a dress rehearsal for what is lurking on the horizon as we inch ever closer to our day of reckoning. 4. Social Security. Failed socialist experiments such as America's Social Security Administration and UK National Assistance Act that vowed to take care of people from the cradle to the grave, beginning almost in parallel with the arrival of the current Aquanium, will practically become defunct and worthless in that they will be inflated away, and the handouts furnished to recipients will barely pay for peanuts, much less everyday cost of living. With the welfare paychecks being handed out to people across much of the Western world having already significantly fallen behind the cost of living due to soaring inflation over the past decade or so, one can already smell the beginning of the end of Social Security as we have known it in our lifetime. 5. Reserve currency. The US dollar will lose its monopoly of being the global reserve currency and make way for Chinese yuan to emerge as the new dominant player in international trade. This is hardly a brainer given that the major global currency almost always belongs to the nation that has proven itself as the manufacturing powerhouse head and shoulders above its competitors as the Oqual cycle draws to a close. Nevertheless, the US dollar will remain a major player in international trade, though in the shadow of Chinese yuan in a manner akin to what happened to the British pound after it was dethroned by the dollar thanks to the 1944 Bretton Woods Agreement. With the dollar no longer being the king, the standard of living in America will precipitously decline in an echo of the plight of the British after the pound lost its global luster some 84 years ago. 6. Chinese hegemony. China will undergo reunification with Taiwan as it knocks America off the perch to become the new hegemon and TikToks the new world order centered around its national interests. As China's star rises and that of America dims with each passing year, it is hard to see how such a reunification central to Chinese hegemony can be averted, particularly in light of the fact that the territorial disputes are at the center of the mayhem triggered by the Oqual cycle as it reaches its crescendo. Nevertheless, United States will continue to be a major global power in a manner akin to the fact that the British influence on global affairs did not merely evaporate from the planet after Britain was dethroned some 84 years ago. Just as the legacy of the British Empire left an indelible mark on human civilization, so will American imprint continue to thrive for at least generations to come across the globe. And 7. Global warming. The climate propaganda will largely die out as environmental focus will shift from global warming to dealing with the true culprit of overconsumption, putting the health of our planet in peril. Given that the root cause of our environment teetering on the precipice of a mental collapse is the pollution caused by overconsumption rather than fossil fuels, truth rather than propaganda will ultimately prevail with the beginning of a new dawn. The rather auspicious spell of the first half of the next Aquanium will also ensure that societal evils such as fraud and propaganda are locked up for the most part for at least several decades, though they will slowly begin to re-emerge from the silos with the onset of the second half. You are listening to the Oqual Cycle with Amjad Farouk, and here is the glossary. Annus Horribilis, from Latin literally meaning horrible year. Annus Horribilis is the 74th year of Oqual cycle, during which Uranus enters its southern winter solstice, the midwinter point indicative of the fact that the worst of the socio-political fallout from our wrongdoings amassed over the course of Oqual cycle is either already upon us or approaching its crescendo. Annus Mirabilis, from Latin literally meaning auspicious year. Annus Mirabilis is the first year of Oqual cycle that all but guarantees the beginning of good times if they have not already arrived on our shores years earlier than anticipated after the dust from the socio-political fallout at the culmination of the previous cycle has settled. Annus Turnalis, from Latin literally meaning turning year. Annus Turnalis is the 43rd year of Oqual cycle that marks its midpoint or tipping point when socio-political progress of human society begins to turn south and ushers in decades of chaos ahead until they morph into an insoluble Rubik's Cube as the Oqual rhythm nears its end. Annus Turnalis can also be envisioned as the point at which human society crosses the Rubicon or reaches the summit before descending on the other side of the mountain to reach the valley beneath. Asian Diamond. Alluding to its geometric shape and a richer culture, Asian diamond is used as an alternative name for India, sometimes also referred to as a holy cow due to the fact that the cud-chewing ruminant commands a divine status among the masses. Asian Giant. Alluding to its humongous inertia both in terms of its landmass and populace, Asian Giant is used as an alternative name for China. Centennium. A period of 100 years, synonymous with a century. Chef d'œuvre, from French literally meaning master of work, but in practice masterpiece as in the context of a book. Cosmotype. In much the same way the genotype represents the genetic composition of an individual, cosmotype defines the celestial make of a person in the sense that heavenly bodies likely govern to a varying degree our personality traits or characteristics in combination with our innate genetics and socio-political environment, synonymous with astrological sign. CNY, symbol for Chinese yuan. DJI, symbol for Dow Jones Industrial Average, a stock market index of 30 large companies in the United States. DNA, acronym for deoxyribonucleic acid, the genetic material or the blueprint of virtually every form of life. Foie gras, from French literally meaning fat liver, but referring to the French delicacy made from the rather fattened liver of ducks after they have been force-fed. GDP, symbol for gross domestic product, a monetary measure of a nation's economic health. GBP, symbol for Great British Pound. Generational time, a period of exactly 21 years. Ghee, butter clarified or melted out of the creamy makhan or cultured butter that forms upon the fermentation of buffalo's milk. A common household chore in rural towns and villages across much of the Indian peninsula. On a personal note, my preteen life was largely powered by the makhan thanks to the industry and generosity of both my biological mother and the bovine mother. Hoi polloi, from Greek literally meaning the many, but in common parlance, the masses. Human lifespan, a period of exactly 84 years. Indian Peninsula, the South Asian peninsula comprised of modern-day nations of India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh, synonymous with Indian subcontinent. Inshallah, from Arabic literally meaning if God willed, but in common parlance, God willing. An interjection used in advance of an outcome to hope for the best. Inshallah is sometimes also used as a polite way of saying no. For example, if a child asks her mother to buy them an expensive toy that she cannot afford to pay for, then she will likely respond, Inshallah, rather than putting it explicitly as, no, we have no money. Les Gaules, an old name for the French due to the fact that much of what is the modern-day nation of France was once called Gaule, Gaule. Los Toros, due to the nation's centuries-old fascination with the encierro or running of the bulls, Los Toros or the bulls is used as an alternative demonym to refer to the Spanish. Lusitania, an ancient name for what is modern-day Portugal. Lusitanian is the demonym of Lusitania. Mashallah, from Arabic literally meaning what God has willed. An interjection used to express the delight at a favorable outcome in reference to the fact that this is what God would have also wanted. Together with Inshallah, Mashallah completes the jewel of interjections widely and frequently used among Arabs of all faiths and Muslims at large to express thanks to God before or after a situation unfolds. Meganium, a period of 1 million years. Mycotus, acronym for Military Industrial Complex of the United States. The close alliance of a U.S. military with the corporations involved in manufacturing and commercialization of military arsenal with the primary purpose of bloating the coffers of the ruling elite. Modern Age, the ongoing historical period in human civilization that began with the advent of a revolutionary mass-producing printing press by the German inventor Johannes Gutenberg circa 1451. Given such a paradigm shift in human civilization, coupled with its coincidence with the start of a new Uranian year, the year 1451 is used as a reference point to mark the beginning of the first Oqual cycle since the birth of modern age. Gutenberg's printing press was a game-changer and marked the death knell for socio-economic dominance of Asia up till then as the center of power shifted to Europe some 600 years ago. MOP, symbol for money printing by the U.S. Federal Reserve, equivalent to the net asset value on the Fed's balance sheet at any given time. NAD, symbol for national debt of the United States. NASA, acronym for National Aeronautics and Space Administration, an agency of the U.S. government charged with advancing space research and programs. NATO, acronym for North Atlantic Treaty Organization, a close military alliance between 32 Western nations spearheaded by America. NOTIS, with the quintessence British note used as a substitute for zero, the notice has nothing to do with being naughty, but rather it refers to the first decade of 21st century. OC, symbol for Oqual cycle. Oqual cycle, literally meaning the 84-year cycle, the adjective Oqual is a portmanteau of octant or 80, quatre or 4, and annual or yearly. Aqua cycle, shorthand for Oqual cycle. Aquanium, a period of 84 years. Aquanium is synonymous with Oqual cycle in a similar fashion to the relationship between annum and annual cycle. Aqualize, to understand and rationalize the history through the lens of Oqual cycle. Aqually, in an Oqual manner, an event expected to occur at a similar time point across 2 or more Oqual cycles in an archetypal manner. Aquandra, the personified alias of Oqual cycle in its ability to forecast the socio-political future, modern-day equivalent of Cassandra. Potus, acronym for President of the United States. Raj, rule or reign in Sanskrit. Raja, king in Sanskrit. Rani, queen in Sanskrit. SCOTUS, acronym for Supreme Court of the United States. Siberian tiger, given that Siberia is not only home to its namesake big striped cat, but that it also accounts for nearly 3/4 of the nation's landmass, Siberian tiger is used here as an alternative name for Russia. Sociopolitical. This adjective is used here to refer to virtually every aspect of human civilization, from social and economic well-being through scientific and technological prowess to institutional and political stability. Teenies. With the suffix teen dominating the numerals from 10 to 19, the teenies refers to the second decade of 21st century. The Eagles. Alluding to the coat of arms of Germany, the Eagles is used as an alternative demonym for the Germans. The Lions. Alluding to the coat of arms of Britain, the Lions is used as an alternative demonym for the British. TLC, acronym for Tender Love and Care. Uncle Sam. With the shared initials, Uncle Sam is the personified alias of the federal government of the United States. Unity. In mathematical language, unity refers to number 1, particularly with regard to the fact that the solution for so many mathematical concepts, such as probability distributions and Boolean functions, take up values between 0 and unity. USSR. Acronym for Unionist of the Soviet Socialist Republics, a Eurasian federation that came into being in 1922, and upon its dissolution in 1991, it yielded 15 independent nations such as the likes of modern-day Russia, Ukraine, and Belarus. Urindi, a portmanteau of Urdu-Hindi language. When spoken in everyday affairs, Urdu and Hindi are mutually intelligible or sometimes even indistinguishable in a manner similar to British English and American English. As a single linguistic entity that ought to be cherished, yet it is derided due to the centuries-old Hindu-Muslim schism, Urindi not only serves as a lingua franca across much of the Indian peninsula, with the head count soon poised to hit the humongous 2,000 million mark, but it would also rank as the second most intelligible or understood tongue after English in this big world of ours. USD. Symbol for United States dollar. Vide infra, from Latin literally meaning see below. Vide supra, from Latin literally meaning see above. Volite, the Indianized name for Britain or strictly England that became popularized during the British Raj and even today remains popular in many corners across the Indian peninsula. In fact, my earliest childhood memories of England began with Volite while growing up in rural Pakistan, and it was not much later in life that I would learn its English equivalent. Volite or British is the demonym of Volite or Britain. The more familiar and popular Blighty in common parlance is the anglicized equivalent of Volite. You are listening to the Oqual Cycle, narrated by Amjad Farooq and powered by Audacity. This is the end of the narration. Thank you for listening and for your interest in the Oqual Cycle. For more information, please log on to www.oqualcycle.com.